In a world where representation in pop culture has become more important than ever, it's just as important to make sure the films get it right. Because representation matters. But maybe not like this. Because when it's done wrong, we all feel it. But when it's done right, you get something powerful. Something that makes people laugh, cry, and feel seen. But not every great story is meant to be funny. Some stories are sacred. Stories like Bless Me Ultima, a cornerstone of Chicano literature written by Rodolfo Anaya in 1972. It's a story about identity, belief, and the strength of cultural tradition. And when it was adapted into a film in 2013, the responsibility was clear. Don't just retell it, honor it. Anaya published Bless Me Ultima in 1972 during the height of the Chicano movement. The Chicano movement was a political movement that spanned from the mid 1960s through the late 1970s. But the Chicano movement wasn't just about civil rights. It was about cultural recognition, educational reform, land rights, and artistic self-expression. Mexican American communities were pushing back against invisibility, demanding space in American institutions, including literature and education. Writers like Anaya were part of this larger wave of creative resistance, alongside figures like Corky Gonzalez, Tomas Rivera, and Sandra Cisneros. Anaya helped define what Chicano literature could be, rooted in land, family, history, and storytelling. Bless Me Ultima gave readers something they hadn't seen in mainstream literature: a young Chicano protagonist navigating questions about identity, belief, and belonging, all set within the cultural fabric of New Mexico. The novel follows Antonio Marrez, a young boy growing up in New Mexico as he struggles with faith, identity, and family expectations. Ultima, a curandera, or traditional healer, guides him through this journey. The novel is deeply rooted in Mexican American spirituality and culture, blending Catholic imagery with indigenous traditions. One of the first major turning points in Bless Me Ultima comes early in the novel, when Antonio witnesses the killing of Lupito, a disturbed war veteran, down by the river. This moment doesn't just introduce violence into Antonio's world, it marks the beginning of his spiritual and moral unraveling. His pistol sounded again. Still, he was not aiming at the men on the bridge, he was shooting to draw their fire. "Shoot! Shoot!" someone on the bridge called. "No! No!" I whispered through clenched lips. But it was too late for anything. The frightened men responded by aiming their rifles over the side of the bridge. One single shot sounded, then a barrage followed it, like a roar of a cannon, like the rumble of thunder in a summer thunderstorm. Many shots found their mark. I saw Lupito lifted off his feet and hurled backward by the bullets. But he got up and ran limping and crying towards the bank where I lay. "Bless me," I thought he cried, and the second volley of shots from the bridge sounded. But this time they sounded like a great whirling of wings, like pigeons swirling to roost on the church top. He fell forward, then clawed and crawled out of the holy water of the river onto the bank in front of me. I wanted to reach out and help him, but I was frozen by my fear. He looked up at me, and his face was bathed in water and flowing. Hot blood, but it was so dark and peaceful as it slumped into the sand of the river bank. He made a strange gurgling sound in his throat. Then he was still. Up on the bridge a great shout went up. The men were already running to the end of the bridge to come down and claim the man whose dead hands dug in the soft, wet sand in front of me.
It's me.
Watching the film scene after reading the book passage really just shows how these two mediums can effectively show the same scene and work into their qualities. For the film, it does such a powerful job at capturing this scene visually and audibly. The muted tones, the distant gunfire, the fear in Antonio's face and his silence as it sticks with us, almost as if we're kids seeing a man get killed. However, in the book, we are given narration, and here we gain internal conflict. We sense the fear of Antonio, of sin, of death, on whether God can forgive Antonio for what he's just seen. Both these mediums do such a perfect job at conveying this scene and working in their qualities. Another powerful way both the novel and film show Chicano identity is through language and its sound. Anaya blends English and Spanish in a way that feels natural. The Spanish words that are brought up during the book and film are not translated. They don't have to be. The story trusts you to feel what they mean. One key moment this is shown is Antonio's first day of school. While getting ready, his parents are talking to him to get prepared for the first day and blend Spanish and English during their conversation. Both the novel and the film perfectly depict how this would be in real life. Bueno, bueno, my father gave in to them. If that is what he is to be, then it is so. A man cannot struggle against his own fate. In my own day, we were given no schooling. Only the ricos could afford school. Me, my father gave me a saddle blanket and a wild pony when I was 10. There is your life, he said, and he pointed to the llano. So the llano was my school. It was my teacher. It was my first love. It is time to go, Mama, Deborah interrupted. Aye, but those were beautiful years, my father continued. The llano was still a virgin. There was grass as high as the stirrups of a grown horse. There was rain. And then the Tejano came and built his fences. The railroad came, the roads. It was like a bad wave of the ocean covering all that was good. Yes, it is time, Gabriel, my mother said, and I noticed she touched him gently. Yes, my father answered, so it is. Be respectful to your teachers, he said to us. And you, Antonio, he smiled, suerte. It made me feel good, like a man.
And only on your first day of school, mijo? My day, only the rich got to go to school. My father, he gave me a saddle blanket and a wild pony, and he said, there, the llano. There's your life.
¿Ves, mijito? That's why we live here, on this dry piece of dirt where nothing grows. So your father can be close to his old mares ways.
Mijo, why don't you ask your mom what was it that made her fall in love with me, huh? Was it the sweat of the horse in my clothes? Or its smell on my hands that made her fall so in love with me?
Ya basta, Gabriel. Basta. Time to go, Mama. Yes, it's time to go.
So it is.
Teresa!
Hijos! All right. Remember, be respectful to your teachers. And Antonio, suerte.
These small decisions in the adaptation matter. Yes, the Spanish is trimmed down, but this is Chicano. It's about being Mexican American, and I believe that the film does a perfect job at preserving the Chicano identity through sprinkling Spanish words in the conversations. It feels real, like a conversation I would have with my dad or uncle. And possibly my favorite part of both the film and novel is when Antonio's father says suerte, meaning good luck. In both the film and the novel, you feel Antonio's happiness after his father tells him this. It's a feeling that every Hispanic kid has felt. The first time your father wishes you suerte. And both the film and novel emphasize it so well and make it such an impactful moment in both. Another powerful example of code switching comes in the language of greetings. In almost every instance, characters greet each other in Spanish, even if they go straight to English in the conversation. It's a form of respect, and the film does a great job of honoring that respect in the scenes from the book. I wished for my mother, but I put away the thought because I knew I was expected to become a man. A radiator snapped with steam and I jumped. The red-haired boy laughed and led me into one of the rooms. This room was brighter than the hall. So it was like this that I entered school. Miss Mastas was a kind woman. She thanked the boy, whose name was Red, for bringing me in, then asked my name. I told her I did not speak English. ¿Cómo te llamas?" she asked. "Antonio Mares," I replied. I told her my mother said I should see her and that my mother sent her regards. She smiled. "Anthony Mares," she wrote in the book. I drew closer to look at the letters formed by her pen. "Do you want to learn how to write?" she asked. "Yes," I answered. "Good," she smiled.
Your classroom's over there.
Good morning. ¿Cómo te llamas?
Antonio Mares. My mother said to send you her blessings.
Antonio Mares. You want to learn to write?
Sí.
Good. Come in.
Both the novel and film gives us Spanish greetings, and in both we see the conversation switch to English immediately. It's subtle, but that's what Bless Me Ultima has been this whole entire time. The subtlety of being Mexican American and how people perceive them and how themselves are perceived in their own mind. It's this genius from Anaya and the film that gives us such a compelling story. The film adaptation of Bless Me Ultima doesn't just follow the plot of the novel. It carries forward the emotional weight and cultural rhythm that makes Anaya's story so meaningful. It preserves the world Antonio lives in. The adobe homes, the wide open llano, the candlelit altars. These aren't just set pieces, they're a part of what defines Chicano identity in the novel. Scholar Gabriel Melendez calls Bless Me Ultima a turning point in Chicano cinema because it brings cultural memory and community storytelling to the surface. The film does exactly that. Not by sensationalizing, but by honoring the slow, spiritual pace of the novel. Ultima isn't turned into a stereotype. She's portrayed with respect, as a healer, a guide, and a symbol of indigenous knowledge. That's not just good storytelling, that's cultural preservation. Director Carl Franklin could have modernized the story or trimmed the quiet moments, but he didn't. He let the story fold naturally, with care and patience, just like Anaya intended. That is why Bless Me Ultima is so important now. Novel, it becomes more than an adaptation. It becomes the continuation of the story.